All right. I want to approach this a little different today, because there's so many new schools on here, that you may have done food service at a restaurant at a larger district. You maybe have never done school food or even food service at all before. And so this call is going to talk about what a day in the life of the food server is going to look like. We'll talk some just basics. Number one, who School Food Solutions is, if you're unclear about my voice, what the NSLP program is, and what really universal meals is. This has been a giant change in California over the past few years coming out of COVID. And so it's really good. It's still just a lot of confusion around it. We're also going to talk about your day. And so I wanted to break up the responsibilities of a food server as what you would do in different time periods. And so we will do that. Also, at the end of this call, we're going to do the USDA civil rights training so that all of you will have that under your have that complete before the start of school. So let's jump right in. If you're not familiar with, I think a lot of you are familiar with School Food Solutions. In California, unfortunately, you get to talk to me a lot, but it's not just me on the team. You know, we've been growing, we've expanded, we're in, a dozen states or so now. And really all of that has to do with how complex and challenging this child nutrition program is. And we really feel passionately about what we do, and we like it. It's a hard job, so we wouldn't be working with you all if we didn't really think that having food in school is important. The other thing I want to let everyone know is our whole team is based on former school operators. So I like to think that we know school food pretty well, but we really know charter schools and small schools and independent districts and private schools. We've all worked there. So this is not LAUSD. There's not, a department of 20 people running food service. You've got 50 hats on, right? And so if it's food service or not food service, right? Like it kind of intertwines. So if you've got, someone called me with an E-rate question today, right? We help you with that, right? That's all based on family income data, or it could be, AB 1383, which we're going to talk about in our next training, which is not necessarily a child nutrition rule, but it definitely is a state rule that impacts your kitchen. So we're here to help, whether it's facility challenges, food challenges. We've got an experienced team, and so I'm excited for all of them to be working with you. All right, what are we working on? We're working on the child nutrition program. This is the NSLP program, as most of us know it by. This is the federal, so even with universal meals, the USDA child nutrition program is still the backbone of our reimbursements. And like any taxpayer funded program, they're specific about what you need to do to get and receive and keep the dollars. And so no matter what you're doing at your school, no matter what state you're in, there's 3 universal things you're doing. You're serving meals that meet the meal patterns specified by the USDA. You're keeping daily production records for what you have served and what you had served credited for. Again, that's for most of our cases, that'll be provided by our vendor, but we're still completing that paperwork. We also need accurate counts of the people we serve, our students, our customers, of the meals we serve to them at the point of service, right? So whether you're using a paper tally sheet or a computerized meal counting system, it has to be done at the point of service. And we'll talk about that again. Now, for the most part, everyone on this, not everyone, but most folks on this call are from California. And so California has become the first state to implement a statewide universal meal program. There was plenty that followed, but California was the first. And this is, again, still built on the backbone of the USDA program. So all of the rules still apply. The other piece that came along with universal meals is California expanded the state meal mandate. And this is pretty clear that any public school, including charter schools, if you're, TK through 12, we're offering breakfast and lunch at no charge. And this is big. We've completely decoupled access to food to family and household income. So regardless of, your income, if you make $0 or $1 million, we offer breakfast and lunch to everyone. And that's really cool because, again, just because you have you have on paper have a high family income, it does not mean that you brought a lunch to school that day. And this gives us the ability to give it to everyone without having to ask for money. All right, this program is full of acronyms. I am going to try to say the acronym and say the full word, but here's the big ones. If you see CNP, that just means Child Nutrition Program. This is the umbrella of all your programs. So we've got the National School Lunch Program, the School Breakfast Program. Those are the ones you have to, or you at least are serving these meals, and so most likely you are operating these programs. Other schools may do after-school snack. They may do summer. They may do a supper, and we also have other options for summer feeding. Again, these here are less common and not required, but available to SFAs. So you are the School Food Authority, right? So that is you. SFAs are the nonprofits that are allowed to run these programs and get reimbursements. Now you can cook your food on site, or you may have a vendor or FSMC. This is your Revolution Foods, your Lunch Masters, your Top Notch, your Fresh and Local, or Fresh Start. These are the companies that deliver you the food. There's also us. We're School Food Solutions, not to SFS, not to be confused with SFA. We're your compliance buddies. We help you out with the paperwork and the back end. There's then your point of service and your point of sale. I use these interchangeably. Point of service is the point where you're handing out your meal. Point of sale is usually we talk about mealtime. That's the brand. That's the Kleenex of your point of sales. That's the brand name. But the idea is the same, as you have a transaction point at the end of your service line where you're claiming those meals. We're also, as we go into the meal pattern, we talk about components, food items, serve and offer versus serve and choice. So components are one of the 5 groups that we're going to offer. We're going to talk about those in a minute. Food items, again, a hamburger is 2 components. So food item would be a hamburger, and it would have a bun component and a patty component. That would be your grain and your meat alternate. Some of the schools on this call do a straight serve model, meaning you give students all of the 5 components they offer. Most of us run an offer versus serve program. When that's available to you, I think that's the best option, and we're going to talk about why and how, and we're going to go into detail on that one. But that's what allows students to decline 2 things that they don't intend on eating, as long as they take a fruit or a vegetable. It's a reimbursable meal under offer versus serve. That helps minimize your cost, minimize your waste, and minimize just the space food is going to take up. It's a win-win for everyone, because why should you have to carry around a bunch of broccoli if kids just are going to put it in the trash can? Because then you got to carry around that trash bag too, right? So we're saving everyone a workers' comp claim. Finally, there's choice. Choice is going to be a big part of our conversation. This is that students get autonomy and can select what they want to eat. So we'll talk more about that as well. All right, that was our housekeeping, definitions, backstory. Let's talk about you, and let's talk about your day. So hopefully it starts at 7 a.m. That's probably unrealistic. I think most of you get to work before that. But your day might look different no matter what program you run. What I want to talk to you about right now, and this is what these photos are, is a vended meal program looks different than what food might look like in a restaurant. And that is for a lot of reasons. A lot of us do not have formal kitchens or traditional style kitchens. Many of us don't have any facilities at all. We're running these out of closets or hallways. And so it might be a folding table where we're laying out sealed entrees and our fruits and our vegetables and milk, but these are still compliant. So we've got our entrees here, our vegetables here, our choice of fruit here, and our choice of milk here. Although I only see 1 color milk carton there, so I've got some follow-up questions for this school. These are old. I think we had the milk waiver back then, but here again, it's milk, veggie, fruit, and then entrees are on a separate table. This is what your service area might look like, and that's okay. There's a lot. Most of schools on here probably looks closer to this than a normal kitchen. This is what a reimbursable breakfast might look like. It could be a 2-ounce grain, 2 different half-cup portions of fruit, and a choice of milk. And that's great. These are portable. They're kind of, orange has its own container, much like the bar. And again, we'll talk more about milk. You can take it. You don't have to take it. This is a reimbursable lunch, and this might be what a lot of you receive. Again, it's hard to tell in plastic wrap, and that's one of the biggest challenges. But we've got barbecue rib sandwich. We've got some coleslaw. We've got a half cup of fruit and as a whole orange and a choice of milk. Some of us run a grab and go breakfast. So we may have a fully reimbursable meal that's already packaged together. And then we have a choice of milk and a choice of additional fruit next to it. This is great. This makes it really easy with a grab and go breakfast. This is all in one package and already reimbursable. So if the kids don't take the milk and they don't take the extra fruit, doesn't matter. This gets you the $3.60 back as a reimbursable meal. Also, you know, if I could wish anything for all of you, it would be for you to have a beautiful brand new kitchen. But most schools, a lot of you don't even have room for a front office, right? You've got very unique facilities. You're working with what you can. You're growing as fast as you can. And so your lunch table might look like this. And you know what? That's okay. Here's a great example of we've got reimbursable meals along with the other components. We've got our point of sale station and we've got our required signage. We fit it all on one lunch table. What I would say is don't be bashful, go buy a tablecloth, but this is compliant. Now, some of you might have this might be what your kitchen looks like. And you know what? That's great. You can run a full service line. You've got hot and cold bins. You've got all of your stuff laid out. You've got a big prep area behind. You might have something that's in between that's much smaller, but again, still compliant, where we set our milk out at the front of the line. We have our fruit choice, our vegetable choice, and then our entree choice. And then we just open this door with a little cart for a point of sale station right here, and that's perfect. It's a great service line. Here's just another example of what it might look like. Is just a simple one table you can fit everything on. And so if this is what you have, great. All right. Let's talk about, so that is vended meal models, vended meal expectations, and what your service area might look like. So you have that. You have your table, you have your kitchen. The thing you're always going to have in any of these combinations, a valid health permit and recent health inspection. So there's no option to operate a kitchen unless the county says you can. If you're having issues with that, that's where we can step in and give you tips on what to do to meet the requirements of your local health department. If you're on this call and you're already receiving reimbursements, you've already cleared that hurdle. We just need to make sure you keep up your health inspections and you keep passing them. All right, let's talk about preparation for lunch. And really, we're going to look at a 10,000 foot view here. This is our system because we're not ordering flour and raw and hard pasta to boil. We're getting pre-cooked meals. So in a vended meal model, this is likely the version or some version close to this is what your school's operating. Is you, the school, or the SFA contract with a vended meal provider. That would again be a Lunchmaster or Revolution Foods, a company like that. They've got dietitians, they've got wholesale vendors. They are planning your menu for you to meet the child nutrition requirements. You then order from the menu they propose to you. So they might give you 4 choices and you may choose to pick, 2 of them or 1 of them, right? Again, there's no requirement for variety. You just need to meet the menu items. The vendor is then going to take usually the entrees that you select and pair those with fruits, milks, and vegetables to meet the meal pattern and the calorie requirements over the week. The vendor will bring those to your school. The school, you're either going to receive it warm or you may have to heat it on site, but you're doing the final warm. I always like to remind schools that we're warming. This food's probably been cooked once or twice already. So we're not, we don't need to put it in an oven at 450. We're probably putting it in a rethermalization unit at 220 to get it up to 165 degrees. That's our safe serving temperature. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. We're serving the food. There's got to be a set of hands out there, and this can be a combination of school staff members, parent volunteers, and student volunteers. Again, there's no requirement that these have to be folks on your salary. And a lot of schools have really helped support their meal program between volunteers and student helpers, right? And so we really just want to make sure that everyone has basic food safety knowledge. And as long as they've got their food handler's card, by all means, let them help you out in the service line. The final responsibility for the SFA in the school is you're counting claiming your meals. So you're the ones required to run the point of sale. We are not going to talk about how to run your point of sale in this call, because if you want to do an extra point of sale training, we'll sign you up for one, and we'll show you specifically in your point of sale system exactly where the buttons are and how to do it. So if you need a point of sale training, reach out to us after the training today. Okay, that's the whole process. If there's, again, but I want to boil this down into simple things that you can take away and remember. So here's the thing. What you want to remember is that when you have a vended meal model, you are paying for everything you order, but you are only getting reimbursed for what you serve. So it's imperative that you, as the school and the eyes on the ground, are making sure that you're being smart about what you're ordering, you're promoting your meal program to increase participation, and that you are accurately counting and claiming everything you serve. Because if a kid takes a meal, that's great, but if you don't put it in your point of sale, you don't get paid back for it, right? You're out $5.50 if it's a lunch, and that's a bummer. We don't want you to leave any money on the table. All right, let's talk food safety. More specifically, let's talk about what I'm not going to talk about. Everyone should have a food handler's card. You can get sometimes your county offers those classes for free. There are multiple online websites that offer ones that are valid in California. ServeSafe is the most popular brand. There's also Always Food Safe. It doesn't really matter who you go through. You just need to keep a valid one. I believe food handlers cards will last for 2 years. There is also a requirement. There's two, and then there's also the food managers. These requirements will vary by county. So the requirement for the CDE is that one person holds a food manager's card. That's usually your food service director. Your food service director is also the person that's overseeing everything and needs the most training. So we recommend that they have their food manager's card. Some health departments will also require that a person at each food service site hold that food manager's card. It's not much more expensive. It is a longer class with an actual test at the end of it. And so if it's not a bad idea to, if you're unsure, it's not a bad idea to have both. And so you're able to do that. And those are reimbursable with your child nutrition dollars and your kid funds. Let's talk about what we are going to talk about today. So again, I'm assuming that everyone has either taken that class once or many times, or is going to take that class, and they will tell you all of the most important practices in the kitchen. Here, I'm going to tell you the have-to-haves right now. So here's what you're doing on a daily basis is you are responsible for 2 temperatures. And I like to think of these as our equipment or our air temperatures and our meal temperatures. So here's the first one. And this should look familiar to all of you because I talk about this every time when I go out to your school site, and you'll notice it's the first thing I walk into your kitchen and look at and take a photo of, is I'd like to see that everyone has a fridge temp log where they're monitoring the temperature daily. They also, the health department and the CDE want to see a second thermometer in there. So that is this hanging thermometer. This is in the back of the fridge. Here's why. Is most fridges have some sort of either analog or digital thermometer on the front, but a lot of times that's mounted to the door. So if you leave this door open, all of a sudden this is going to read 65 degrees, but your food's still fine. It's just that it's not an accurate reading. Having one in the back of your refrigerator will give you a more accurate reading. Also, if these are reading 2 different numbers, you know something's broken, right? So this is a belt and suspenders. It's a calibration. Am I getting accurate temperature readings? If these are reading different numbers, we got to figure out why. It also should be reading 40 degrees. It also should be relatively consistent. So as you're writing down your temperatures on your temp log right here, if you're seeing wild variations in temperature, 36 degrees, 41 degrees, 39 degrees, it might be time to get your fridge serviced. You know, the good thing with commercial fridges, they're kind of infinitely repairable, but they do have moving parts and wearable parts, and you need to get an expert out there to dust things off and clean things up and top off Freon. And again, I'm not a fridge mechanic, but it's not expensive. Here's what I'll say. It's much less expensive to do it preventatively than it is to do it with an emergency service after it's already broken and your food spoiled. So this is very important to show that we have proper food handling and food custody procedures. You're doing this daily. You want to do this also. This is the first thing you do when you come into the kitchen that morning. Here's why. If your fridge is reading 60 degrees, your milk probably spoiled. You need a backup plan for that school day, and the sooner you know you're in backup plan mode, the more time you have to fix it. The second temperature we are taking is our food temperature. We're taking our hot food and our cold food. Um, One thing I've noticed is a lot of schools have leftover infrared thermometers from COVID, right? They're the guns where you can shoot them at anything and it'll tell you the temperature. They're very fun to use. They're not super accurate for food because I want to know what the middle of the food is at, not the exterior packaging. So I recommend ordering, and you get these off Amazon. I recommend ordering a digital one and one, if you spend a little bit more money on it, usually the increased price means a faster read time. So that just means less time that you're standing in front of a hot oven waiting for it to come to temperature. Spend $30, not $12, and get one that'll read a little faster. But here's the idea: is we want to make sure our hot food is warmed up to be sufficiently hot. So if we are receiving food cold, we need to bring it up past 65 degrees at our school site to make sure that it does not have any bacteria growing on it, or if there was, that it's zapped and killed before you service. Also, it's important to monitor temperatures, both because no one likes eating lukewarm food, and no one likes eating food that's been burnt to a crisp, right? And so we really want to, we want to find the sweet spot where we are getting it to 165. So if I measured my food and it's reading 172, that's clearly above 165, we are safe and ready to serve. I'm going to turn this oven down to warm mode or to a low temperature. Now, after it hits that high temperature, I just need to hold it at 140 or above. And so again, I want to keep the food warm, but not zap it into a crisp, right? Same idea with your milks. You want to, your same idea with your cold items. I think the easiest way is to temp one item that you're pulling out of the fridge. And we always have extra milk, so I say start with a milk. It's also fun to stab a milk with your thermometer. If you don't want to make a huge mess, and I never opt for this, I always stab it, but you're welcome to just open it like a normal person and just take the temperature. We're going to discard this milk after we temp it. We just want to make sure that it's 41 degrees or below. All right. The other thing that you are going to have either on your site or receive from your vendor is your HACCP safety plan. You'll probably know this word only because your health inspector always wants to see it. So we want to have that on site. If you don't have that, reach out to your vendor. Again, we want to make sure that all of our fridges and freezers have thermometers and that they all have daily temperature logs. I recommend just getting one of those plastic page protectors, kind of like here. Oh, wait, no, this one doesn't have it. That's just taped to it. Get one of those plastic page protectors, put 12 photocopies of the temperature log in there, and you're good for the whole year. We want to ensure, so one of the things to check, before, as you're coming back from summer break, did our thermometers walk off from the kitchen? And if they did, let's order new ones or go buy new ones. Also, if we are, so say we have family style food or we want to serve an entree after, do we have the little alcohol cleaning swabs? That way we can clean the probe thermometer before we stick in the food, and then it's still safe to eat. And then again, the most important thing is, because I watch schools, they do all this work to take the temperature and then they don't really they just write it down. If it's not in the temperature safety zone, right? So if it's not 165 and above for our hot items, or 41 degrees and below for our cold items, we gotta then figure out what we need to do. And so that would be usually a call. I think so what I will say is, if it's hot, it's a hot item that's not hot enough yet, leave it in the oven, right? Let's let it get fully to temperature. If it's a cold item that is outside of that range, before you throw everything in the dumpster, I would call your vendor and game plan with them about how and why, what your temperatures are, how far they're out of range. There is some flexibility. So again, it's not time to panic. It is time to follow up with next steps, to ensure our food's safe. Also, for schools that are receiving hot food or for schools that are heating, anything that after we heat stuff up, it needs to be consumed or discarded within 4 hours, right? So we are not saving our hot entrees. They both probably will not be very good to cool down and then reheat again. And they also would not be safe to eat afterwards. So that is one thing to always keep in mind. All right. Now it's time to serve the food. So we are we've heated everything up. We've checked our temperatures. We've written those down on our production records. We've prepped what we've received. We prepped what we're about to serve. And now the bell rings and kids are coming through the service line. Here's what they should see on your service line. So whether it's straight serve, whether it's offer versus serve, if you are serving lunch, every day you will have a fruit, vegetable, a grain, a meat or meat alternate, a protein, and a choice of milk. You'll have 2 types of milk. If you do not have all of these things, you did not put out the full meal, or you did not receive the full meal, or you do not have a reimbursable meal. We got to figure out what's missing and where it's at. Sometimes things hide places. So a salad most likely could be your meat alternate, your vegetable, and your grain. If a dinner roll or some sort of tortilla or who knows what, that could all be in one packaging. So we want to check our production records to see where the items are crediting where, but there is no day that you're serving lunch that all of these things are not offered. That is not a reimbursable meal. Now, we offer all of those, but offer versus serve is the beautiful option that allows students to decline the things that they don't intend to eat. And so this helps us reduce food waste. It helps us reduce food cost, and it gives students choice and autonomy, right? And that feels good, right? So if someone says you have to eat all of this, that doesn't feel good. But if it says, look at all these options you have today, what would you like to eat? Pick a fruit, vegetable, and both. That feels a lot better. In practice, here's what you're going to see. So at lunch, breakfast and lunch are different, just to keep you on your toes. Lunch, we still offer 5 full components. Students may select 3, 4, or 5 of them. Again, they can take all 5. That is a full, complete meal, and we encourage it. If they're only taking 3 of those 3, one must be a half cup of fruit or vegetable, along with 2 other full components. So that's why we say take a fruit, vegetable, or both. Offer versus serve for breakfast, we're offering 4 items. A lot of times that's only going to be a grain, a fruit, and a milk. There's not a lot of great breakfast vegetables. And there was restrictive rules in years past about crediting protein for the breakfast menu. They've expanded that, so now you can offer protein twice a week, and hopefully we'll see more yogurts and egg sandwiches and things like that for breakfast. Again, looking at the same thing in a different way, here's the breakfast menu. Those are the 3 components you're going to see every day. You may see vegetables subbed in, not often, but you might. And you may see a meat alternate subbed in for one of the grains, but you'll still see grain daily. Again, you still can't take a reimbursable breakfast without a fruit. With lunch, we offer all 5, and they have the option of taking all 5. But they don't have to. They just need to take 2 plus the fruit or vegetable. Which leads me to, I think, the most confused part is that students do not have to take a milk. We offer, here's what's confusing. You as the SFA and the kitchen, every day you will put out 2 types of milk. There'll be 2 different cartons of milk out there. Also, side note, they figured out the milk carton supply issue, so hopefully we'll have more milk variety, but at the very least, you're offering 2 types of milk. Students can decline both of them. They do not have to choose a milk, and that can still be a reimbursable meal. So whether it's just a preference or a dietary, if they have sensitivity to milk, they don't have to take it. Do not force them to take milk. And again, we're going to talk more about the meal pattern in our second training. So if you're like, I'm 80% there, I think that makes sense, don't worry. We're gonna do another deep dive on it. It will make sense if you're in my afternoon training, you'll be an offer versus serve expert by 2:30. 1:30? When are we starting? 2:30. All right, let's talk about after school snack. It's always straight serve. If you are not all schools can offer free after school snack to everyone. If you are not offering snack but are interested, we can talk about it because maybe we can get you that. With after school snack, here's a couple of things you have to do. So you would be eligible to do this if you participate already in the school breakfast NSLP program. You have to operate an enrichment or educational program, and this has to be 9 times out of 10, it has to be after school. There's a couple exceptions for people that run extended school days, but this is not a midday snack. So unfortunately, you can't do a snack at 10:30 and get reimbursed for it. You can do breakfast after the bell. So if your kiddos need a little something midday, we've got options for them. The biggest thing for snack, to make it pencil out for your school to do it as a reimbursable meal, you need to be either site or area eligible. And that's something we'll need to look at your data and the surrounding areas data to make sure that you are 50% or more free or reduced. If you are, then it makes sense to participate in a reimbursable snack. Snack rules are a little different. It's 1 snack per child per day, and they must be identified at the point of sale with a named roster. So even if you're a CEP school and you're using and you're not using a named roster for lunch, you do need that for snack. Snack can come in a variety of combinations, but the simplest rule is they are offered 2 and they take 2. So if you are offering 2 things and they only want 1 of them, it's not reimbursable if they take the 1. You should pair them together. The other nice part about this is you can just pre-bag them or pre-plate them so that whatever you're offering, whether it's a fruit and a meat stick or a granola bar and some baby carrots, package them together and it's and you're just handing those out. All right. Let's talk about meal counts. So here's the other thing. So we are, again, in our day metaphor, we are smack dab in the middle of meal service. We've set out all of our components and our students are coming through our line. And now we need to count our meals. So at breakfast, you've got options. So this was, remember, we can't do a midday snack. You can do brunch. So the state meal mandate requires you to offer breakfast, and breakfast just needs to be offered in the morning, and it needs to be offered 2 hours away from your lunch. And the whole idea there is don't offer a super late breakfast because then no one's going to be hungry for lunch, right? But you can do what I think most people refer to as like a traditional breakfast is breakfast before the bell. School starts at 8, breakfast service is 7:30 to 8. But you don't have to do that. And normally breakfast participation is lower because everyone's running late in the morning, right? So do it after the bell. You can do a combination of before the bell and an after the bell. You can do only the after the bell. All of those qualify for the state meal mandate. We just have to offer breakfast. You can do a grab and go version of this. This is where you might do a breakfast cart at the drop-off area where all your families, your buses, and your cars drop kids off. Meet them where they're at. Don't make them walk across campus just to go to your cafeteria. Wheel a cart out with everything pre-bagged and hand it out where they are. And so you can do that before the bell or after the bell. And you can do that as a second chance. So second chance would be as you have a before the bell service, and then you have a second option for students that did not receive a meal before the bell to grab a breakfast during the school day. You only get to claim those once. So that's you can, if a kid comes to your line twice, only one of those breakfasts is reimbursable. You can do them in the classroom as well. That's really hard. So if you are interested in doing in the classroom breakfast, let's talk about it because I want to talk you out of it. It might be a fit. So again, I want to make sure we have a game plan. The challenge within the classroom is that your teachers are likely the person responsible for the meal counts, and that's a lot of extra responsibility on someone who already has a pretty challenging job. And the last thing that they want to do is do paperwork in the morning, right? And so what usually happens is that you get less than accurate paperwork back. Now it's very doable. I got plenty of schools that do an exquisite job with breakfast in the classroom. There's also a lot of ways that we can meet everyone in the middle. So that could be breakfast carts in the hallway, or that could be grab and go distribution during the lines, right? So you could, if everyone lines up before they're from morning recess before they're dismissed into class, they could just grab their breakfast. They could still eat it in the classroom while they're doing silent reading, but you as the food service manager can still control the meal counting and claiming part of it. And that's where I really land, is I want these to be accurate. Lunch in the cafeteria, that's going to be more traditional. You're putting all your food out in your service area. Again, our service area might not be traditional. It might be a picnic bench. It might be a full kitchen. It might be a window. It might be a rolling cart. But the idea is that classrooms are dismissed at their scheduled times. They come to you. Your point of sale should always be at the end of the line. Meals should always be recorded by staff using a computer or a roster system. Again, you can't back these in. You can't guess. You can't remember. We got to do it at the point of sale. Now, there's multiple ways we can do it. And so whether it's a pin or a barcode, I'm going to show you some cool options. The person at the point of sale. So it's really easy to train your volunteers to restock the fruits and the vegetables. It's not really easy to train them to use the point of sale. That probably should be you. That really should not be a student or a volunteer. Because if they don't take a reimbursable meal, you need to send them back, right? We have a kitchen with one thing on the menu, and it's a reimbursable lunch. So if they didn't take a reimbursable lunch, they don't get to take it, right? We're going to send them back to choose a fruit or vegetable. You can also just keep a fruit or vegetable with you at the point of sale and just hand it to them, right? Like, let's not make them like salmon swimming up streams. Let's give them this food and get on with your day so you can keep your line moving. It is, and I want to be, and when I say your line, I very much mean this. This is your line. This is your cafeteria. So if you need to stop it, slow it down, or send the students back to reset and do it again, you not only can, you should. If you don't have a teacher's voice yet, go find a teacher and they can teach you how to raise their voice with authority. And you can do that. Is your line. You are running your kitchen. They should come through your line as you expect them to. And if they're not meeting expectations, let's, again, work within your school's norms and cultures. We don't want it to be a complete mismatch, but we want you to have complete control over your line at all points in time. One thing you might not have control over is internet failures or computers breaking or dying. You always want to have a backup. And so you should be printing out backup rosters from your point of sale. If you don't know how to do that, let's schedule a training and I'll show you how. But you always want a backup plan. All right, let's look at some interesting point of sale systems. So if you are used to using mealtime, this should look familiar to you. But the one thing that's different is we have the mealtime screen facing the students. And so what this school does, and again, they have the luxury of having they've got a traditional old school cafeteria. They've got a service line here. They've got room to have a desktop computer. So I realize that's not everyone's school site. What they did is they got a touch screen desktop monitor. So as their preschool, their TK, and their kinder students come through the line, they just find their name and tap their photo here. And that is them self-identifying themselves, and that automatically runs them through the line. So the only thing our server here is doing is just verifying that their name, their proper name, and that meal, they took a compliant meal and that they hit the right name, and they're automatically counted in the system. Again, not everyone has this, but you know what you do have? Probably have colored paper somewhere around your school. I really like this system. So this is for TK and Kinder. We just printed out their photos on one side of the card. We put their barcode on the other side of the card. The students, all they have to do is come up to this is the beginning of the meal line here. Students just need to find their face and take their card, and they hand their card off, and that's how they self-identify themselves. Our kitchen manager here just will scan those cards at the end of the meal service and then just clip them up to the pull chart before the next day. It's a really smooth way. The other thing this does, the line naturally slows down here as students look for their name. So as they go through the line, it's much slower, right? So you're not bogged down at your point of sale. It naturally filters itself at the beginning of the line. This is just a super smart way to do this. Also, you don't need any special equipment. We've got old shop stools and some old pull charts here. This works really well. So you may also just choose not, whether you're a small school or a school that you don't want to do, you don't have a PIN number or barcode, that's not going to work. They can just say their name, and that works well too. So here's an example of a high school with a touch screen Chromebook. So the thing here is, you can see the students clearly pointing to their photo that's in the system. So they are identifying themselves. And I think this is the coolest move. The staff member just uses their knuckle to tap the screen. So they're typing and tapping all at the same time. I've seen very few lines move this fast. It works really well, with no special equipment, no special training, no exhaustive rollout. It's just this is a touchscreen. I don't even know if this is a computer. It's a touchscreen Chromebook, I believe, with I see a Windows key on it. It's a computer, touchscreen laptop, and they just do it all with their hands. It's really fast. It works really well. It's very effective. Here's an example of a school that just has a traditional service window. Service windows are tough because there's always a stagger of students. They need to walk through the line, right? And so, summer coming on at the perfect time. They need to move through the line, and so it takes a little bit longer. But what works very well is that if students are doing half the work for you, they're just typing in their PIN, you're just verifying, or in this case, handing them the meal. That makes your line go a lot smoother. I got 1,000 ideas for POS setup. So if you're not sure if yours is working right, we can talk about that specifically. But here's what I want you to leave with today. No matter what system you pick, it's at the end of your line, where students are self-identifying themselves, whether it's name, barcode, PIN. All of those are correct options as long as the students identifying themselves and it's the end of your point of sale line and they have a compliant meal. You can never, never back in meal counts. So using an attendance roster is not acceptable. Guessing, remembering, counting your leftovers. So we call it counting plates. None of that works. It has to be whether, and again, this is provision 2, CEP, FRL, no matter what program you're running, you are doing a meal count at the point of transaction at the end of the line after the student had the opportunity to select all of the 5 components. They didn't have to take all 5, but they had to have the opportunity to select them, and that you need to count it after they do so. We also, here's the other thing. If you do you're on the hook for doing all of this hard work, make sure you get credit for it. So always check your meal counts against your production records for accuracy. If your production records, so this is your production records are like you're writing down what you started with, what you served, and what you had left over. If you show you served 100 physical meals, right? The meals are gone from your service line. They went to some student to eat. If you show you served 100 of them, your meal time or your point of sale should also show 100 of them. If it doesn't, you're not getting paid back for those. And we need to figure out where the discrepancy is. We also need to keep a paper backup roster just in case. This could be a printed roster from your point of sale system. This could be that yellow legal pad that's always just sort of stuck in a stack of papers in your office. If you can write stuff down when it's happening, there's a really good chance that we can help you fix it and get those meals backdated so that you can claim those at some point. So if everything fails, just start writing stuff down. All right, share tables. There's been debate and controversy of, do I want to have one, or, post-COVID, people had stopped doing them. You can absolutely have one, and you should have one. And part of SB 1383, which we'll talk about in the next training, is part of the law is this should be part of your plan to divert waste. So 3 best practices on this. Keep an eye on it. This is not for kids to play with the food. This is for kids to take food that someone else didn't want for them to eat. That's all it's for. Don't make it too easy to discard. If it hasn't been clear already, part of this program is we're trying to influence kiddos to eat fruits and vegetables. Like, that's literally where all this taxpayer fund. You're paying taxes to help kids learn to eat fruits and vegetables. If you don't actually give them the opportunity to try them, it's not achieving the outcome we want, right? So although they can put it on the share table, we always want to encourage them to try it. What we don't want to use is language like, just throw it. If you don't want it, just throw it on the share table. Or if you have to take this, just throw it on the share table. Let's find a more let's wordsmith our sales pitch there a little bit and say, we'd love you to try either a fruit or vegetable today. You've got to pick one of them. If you're really not interested in trying it, then you also can put it on the share table. Put it a little farther away. Don't make it super easy. We want them to sit down with the food, eat with their friends, and try it. See that their friends are eating it and they would eat it too. Finally, these have already been bought and paid for by the US government. We can't reserve them. It would be fun to just have one bag of baby carrots constantly recircling through the program, but that is not how it works. Once it gets claimed in your point of sale, it can never be reserved. It can be given away in other areas, but it can never be put back into your meal service to be claimed. All right, we made it to the end of the day, and which we're getting close to the end of the presentation too, but we got to clean up. And so, again, I'm not going to teach you how to wipe down the tables, and hopefully you've got some help doing that. One of the things I am going to teach you about is production records. This is your daily paperwork. This is the story of your meal service. If I've ever come out to your school site, or if we have ever prepared for your audit, you see me, that's the first thing I ask for, and I start scribbling all over them. This is, you're only audited once every 5 years, which is great, but in the gap time between those 5-year audits, you need to be able to substantiate that every meal you serve met the meal pattern. And the only way to do that is with these MPRs. They go by different names with different companies. So they could be meal production records, they could be production forms, they could be transit logs, they could be transit. There's a bunch of different versions of these, but they all look some version of this, which is what was on the menu today, which also is what you should be putting out on your service line. So if you get meals that are delivered 2 days at a time or 3 days at a time, your production record tells you what to take out of fridge. So you should never be confused about what is getting served for lunch that day. It's already menued on your production record. They'll tell you what they credit for. So you'll have credit information here. You'll tell you what was planned. Planned is also likely what is delivered. Now, your planned number might be different than your actual produced number, right? So if you drop a bunch, if some looked spoiled, if some were damaged, like there's a whole host of things where you might receive something but not feel comfortable serving it, then you adjust that number. So if we started with 265 but could only serve 255, we'd represent that there. We also look at what we have left over, and that number the difference between those really should be what we serve. We also want to talk about what we did with it. Some things we save if they're reservable, some things we discard naturally. We also want to look at our top level numbers. What was the total amount of meals we served, and what does it say in our point of sale? These are the numbers we're comparing with our mealtime report, because if these don't match, where's the loss at, right? We have a big question of do we have a counting and claiming issue? Did we have a point of sale issue? Do we have a data issue where kids aren't getting put in the point of sale? But the very least, if those numbers are different, we're either over claiming or under claiming, and both of those we want to fix. Okay, this is all the information that is on those. The last thing that will be put on your recording on these, you're putting your meal temperatures on here. Remember, our air temperatures, our equipment temperatures go on that fridge log. This is where we're putting our food temperatures, and we're doing that daily. Some vendors may give you, and so last thing on this one, some of these, the vendor will deliver to you. Some of these you need to print or produce yourself. If your vendor is Revolution Foods, you have to print these out from the Centro system. You can do it a week in advance, but what the driver gives you is not your MPR. And so what I heard a lot of people get real excited when Rev made this change, and they said, oh yeah, we don't have to do production records anymore. And I said, no, that is not true. You don't have to, you print them and then do them. And so again, I think there's a lot of benefits to that. It's just something that you want to mark on your calendar to do as soon as they're available in Centro. And then I see there's some Rev folks on the call, so they're the ones you want to, reach out to them. They're really helpful, and they can get you set up in that system. And there's a lot of self-serve options in there for you, so take advantage. What every vendor will bring you, including Rev, is a transit log. Sometimes they're combined with your MPRs. Sometimes they're a separate document. This is your packing slip. This is what should have come off the truck in the order with that delivery that day. Everyone makes mistakes, especially if you order a lot of food. If you order a lot of food, you receive a lot of food, and then there's a lot of opportunity that maybe a box gets left on. We want to go, and so the question I always get is, do I have to count everything? And the answer is yes. How do you know you received everything unless you check? Now, I know if you're planning to serve 400 meals, you might have received 350 pieces of fruit, and I'm not expecting you to count every piece of fruit, but I do want you to verify that if you have multiple boxes of fruit, you open those boxes and verify that, just by eyeball, like these are 120 count apples. I'm supposed to get 240 apples. I have 2 boxes of apples. Do both those boxes, number one, have apples in them? Do they look full? And so that's because if they're not, or if, again, mistakes happen, if the driver's still there, they always have food on their truck, or they can come and bring you stuff back. It's easier to fix things when they're discovered right away than when you discover them 10 minutes before meal service. If you discover them 10 minutes before meal service, no one can get them to you in time, right? And so you either need to hope you have something else to offer, or you can't claim those meals. So again, it is the school's, the vendor obviously is in charge of bringing you what you order, but it's the school's requirement, or it's the school's responsibility to verify that. And if it's not right, reach out to the vendor as soon as possible. If you've got other issues, because stuff happens, right? All of our vendors in California deliver tens of thousands of meals a day. It's a lot to get out daily, and mistakes happen. So if stuff happens, take photos of it, take documents of it, save it, right? So if you have a food quality issue, save that entree and let the vendor pick it up the next day. They're going to investigate it. And because the whole goal is they fix it and they get you out the correct food the next time. So also include, if these are ongoing issues, include me on the emails. I want to keep tabs on what's going on too, because I want to be able to help you get a fast resolution if you're having delivery issues. All right. We will do questions in a short 12 minutes. I'm going to play this video. This is the required civil rights training. So pay attention. This is for California. And then hang on after this, and we will open the mics up and we'll do a full Q&A. So let me get this video playing, and everyone pay attention.
Welcome to the annual Civil Rights and Complaints Training, course number 410. In this training, we will review civil rights compliance in the Federal Child Nutrition Programs, or CNPs. During this training, you will gain an understanding of all mandatory civil rights training topics, identify the sponsor's responsibilities to maintain compliance with civil rights regulations, and be provided a list of available civil rights resources. The purpose of federal civil rights regulations is to ensure that CNP benefits are available to all eligible people in a non-discriminatory manner. All agencies receiving federal funds must implement civil rights requirements to be eligible for the CNP funding. The following is a list of protected classes that are covered under the CNPs: race, color, age, sex, disability, and national origin. There are additional classes listed in the non-discrimination statement, but these 6 are specific to the CNPs. Discrimination is defined as different treatment that distinguishes one person or a group of persons from others, either intentionally or unintentionally, by neglect, an action, or lack of action based on the protected classes. Some of the areas reviewers will look at during a review include determining the following: that a complaint procedure is in place, language accommodations are available for participants with limited English proficiency, or LEP, and accommodations are available for participants with disabilities. The reviewer will also review students' denied applications to determine if a disproportionate number of these applications were submitted by minority households. They will also observe the meal service to ensure all students are receiving equal benefits without discrimination. The reviewer will also look for whether or not a media release was done, if the sponsor has collected racial and ethnic data for their participants, if the "And Justice for All" poster is prominently displayed, if the current non-discrimination statement is on all program documents, and verify that all frontline staff are trained annually. All of these review topics will be expanded upon in this presentation. Title VI regulations require state agencies, local agencies, or other subrecipients to take reasonable steps to ensure meaningful access to the information and services they provide. This includes making a reasonable effort to ensure that the LEP population can access materials in their native language. Sponsors participating in the CNPs are required to provide language assistance to the participants and potential participants that we serve. If a person is denied access to the CNPs because of a language barrier, this could be a civil rights violation under the protected class of national origin. The more frequent our contact with LEP participants is, the more likely language services are needed and the greater responsibility we have to provide them. A person with a qualified disability may not be excluded from, denied benefits of, or subjected to discrimination in any program or activity related to the CNPs. An agency may not restrict access for participants with disabilities to programs, services, or activities because of architectural barriers, equipment barriers, the need for related aids and services, or the need for auxiliary aids. To meet ADA accessibility requirements, agencies must have a system in place to identify and evaluate office space, meeting rooms, and restrooms for accessibility by disabled persons. They must implement policies and procedures ensuring access for participants with disabilities to programs, services, and activities, and they must provide appropriate aids and services for persons with disabilities and must not have policies that limit participation by persons with disabilities. Sponsors are responsible for evaluating their buildings and developing procedures to ensure access. Accommodations must include but are not limited to the following: ramps for office accessibility, entrance areas accessible for persons in wheelchairs, and drinking fountains and water coolers accessible for persons in wheelchairs. Accommodations may also include a modification to the student's meal, which will be covered more fully on the next slide. If a child has a medical statement on file or an individual education plan that addresses a special dietary need, a sponsor or agency must reasonably accommodate that child. Potential reasonable accommodations a child may need include but are not limited to food substitutions due to food allergy or intolerance, or food texture modifications. For NSD guidance regarding reasonable accommodations, refer to the Modifications to Accommodate Disabilities Management Bulletin located in the Additional Resources section below this video. If a sponsor or agency is unsure if an accommodation is reasonable, they may contact the NSD Civil Rights Coordinator or Program Analyst for more information. The "And Justice for All" poster must be displayed in a prominent place. This includes anywhere food is served, such as classrooms, cafeterias and food stands, and also places where parents and the public can view the poster, such as the attendance office or another area where parents and the public have access. The displayed poster must be 11 inches by 7 inches. Posters can be requested from the NSD by phone at 800-952-5609 or 916-322-2135, or by email at hsashington@cde.ca.gov. You can also download poster translations at the USDA and Justice for All Guidance and Translations webpage. The link to this page can be found in the Additional Resources section below this video. The non-discrimination statement can be found on the Injustice for All poster and also on the NSD Civil Rights webpage. The non-discrimination statement also provides information on how to file a complaint with the USDA. It cannot be modified in any way, and it must be prominently displayed on all appropriate CNP and agency publications, websites, and informational materials. Please remember that the non-discrimination statement cannot be modified. The short version of the statement reads, "This institution is an equal opportunity provider." It can only be used on documents such as flyers and posters in a font no smaller than the text because they are by nature a one-page document. The non-discrimination statement does not need to be on menus unless they contain other information about the meal program. Here are some examples of the types of documents that must contain the non-discrimination statement: enrollment forms, employee handbooks, newsletters, brochures, websites, parent and student handbooks, print or broadcast advertisements, and flyers. Basically, anything that mentions the CNPs must have the non-discrimination statement prominently displayed. The requirement for public notification is monitored by the NSD and is required as a part of annual training. Sponsors operating the CNPs must include a public notification system that informs the public of the availability of the CNPs and notifies participants of program rights, policies of non-discrimination, and procedures for filing a complaint. This information must also be provided in alternate formats for persons with disabilities. Sponsors are responsible for annually training their subrecipients, including any other staff involved in CNPs. The sponsor must provide and maintain documentation indicating that the civil rights training occurred, the topics covered, and documentation of the participants who attended. The following is a list of mandatory civil rights training topics: collection and use of data, effective public notification systems, complaint procedures, compliance review techniques, conflict resolution, resolution of noncompliance, requirements for reasonable accommodations of persons with disabilities, requirements for language assistance, and customer service. Sponsors and subrecipients must establish a system to collect racial and ethnic data for potentially eligible populations, applicants, and participants in their program service area. This information must be maintained for 3 years plus the current year. This data will be used to determine how effectively CNPs are reaching potentially eligible persons and beneficiaries, and to identify areas where additional outreach is needed. Customer service is an important aspect of most of our jobs, and we must all do our part to ensure equal treatment in the administration of the CNPs. We do this by eliminating illegal barriers that prevent or deter people from receiving benefits and ensuring that our customers are treated with dignity and respect. In addition, we must ensure that staff and participants have knowledge of their rights and responsibilities, are provided accommodations when needed, and that the sponsor's behavior is not discriminatory. Overt identification is any action that may result in a child being recognized as potentially eligible or certified to receive free or reduced price school meals. Sponsors must ensure that a child's eligibility status is not disclosed at any point in the process of providing free or reduced price meals, including notification of the availability of free or reduced price benefits, certification and notification of eligibility, provision of meals in the cafeteria and at the point of service. For more information, refer to the Preventing Overt Identification Management Bulletin, the link to which will be provided in the referenced resources below. It is important to keep in mind that many times conflicts can be resolved before they become a complaint. To avoid potential civil rights complaints, keep the following in mind. Avoid the desire to place blame. Have good listening skills. Attempt to improve the situation. Communicate clearly. Sponsors are required to appoint a civil rights coordinator, develop and implement a written procedure to handle complaints regarding the CNPs, and have a system in place to document and track complaints. Sponsors must also make every attempt to help the complainant file the complaint and forward all discrimination complaints received regarding the CNPs to the USDA within 3 working days. If the sponsor is found to be out of compliance with any civil rights or program requirements during a review or as the result of a complaint, the sponsor must immediately take steps to correct the noncompliance and provide documentation that the noncompliance is permanently corrected. You can find information on civil rights requirements on the CDE USDA Civil Rights and Complaints webpage or in the CDE Civil Rights and Complaints Handbook. The links to these web pages will be provided in the referenced resources below. For any questions regarding complaints, please contact Heather Sashington, Civil Rights and Complaints Coordinator, by phone at 916-322-2135 or by email at hsashington@cde.ca.gov.